Hello everyone and welcome back to Shadow Man Stories. I can picture some of you already in bed, maybe some of you just getting home from work. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, I'm glad you're here. If this helps you relax or sleep, please like and subscribe. It means a lot. Now, let's get you comfortable and I'll tell you tonight's story. My name is Victor Coldstone, and I've spent 17 years as a ranger in Denali National Park. I've pulled 43 people out of crevasses, treated 68 cases of severe frostbite, and recovered 19 bodies from the mountain. I'm telling you this because you need to understand I'm not some soft city person who jumps at shadows. I know cold, I know wilderness, I know death. But I didn't know what was really out there. February 1987. That's when everything I thought I knew turned to ice and shattered. I grew up in Alaska. My mother was a Inupiat, and she used to tell me stories about the Tornarsuk giants made of ice and fury who walked the frozen places. I loved those stories as a kid, but somewhere along the way, I stopped believing. The military teaches you to trust facts, not fairy tales. When I lost 3 soldiers to hypothermia during Arctic training, I learned that the real monsters are wind, cold, and human stupidity. Nothing supernatural about it. I became a ranger because I thought I could save people from those real dangers. 17 years of proving I was right. I should have listened to my mother. The storm hit Wonder Lake on a Tuesday. Not just any storm, the kind that makes even veteran weathermen nervous. Wind screaming at 90 miles per hour, temperature at 40 below, wind chill pushing 65 below. The kind of cold that can kill you in 8 minutes if you're not careful. I was alone at the monitoring station, 85 miles deep into the park. My nearest backup was Ranger Danny Nuka, 47 miles away by snowmobile. The isolation never bothered me. After my divorce, I actually preferred it. My daughter Sarah lived with her mother in Anchorage, and up here, I didn't have to think about the family I'd lost. The radio crackled around 3 p.m. Headquarters calling about a missing climbing team. Elite mountaineers, the dispatcher said. 5 days overdue. Last radio contact 72 hours ago. What was their last transmission? I asked. Static hissed. Then the dispatcher's voice came through, worried. The team leader said, and I quote, "Something big, moving in the whiteout. Can't be right. Too big." My stomach went cold. Define too big. That's all we got. Their emergency beacon activated 6 hours later, then went silent. Satellite picked up heat signatures at their last known position, then nothing. We need you to investigate. I looked out the window. The storm was getting worse. Snow fell so thick I couldn't see 20 feet. The wind made my cabin shake. "Weather's bad," I said. "Visibility near zero." "We know, but you're the closest, and if anyone can handle it, it's you." They were right. I'd done rescues in worse conditions, probably. I geared up in my cold weather suit, the good one, rated to 60 below. Loaded my pack with 7 days of food, emergency shelter, satellite phone, night vision, thermal imaging. My snowmobile had GPS and a backup beacon. Everything by the book. The Inupiat elders in the village had warned people away from that area for years. They called it a hunger ground, a place where the spirits were angry. I'd always figured they were just trying to keep tourists from getting lost and making my job harder. Before I left, I checked my gear one more time. That's when I noticed something weird. The temperature gauge on my cabin's outside thermometer kept jumping. 40 below 1 second, 60 above the next, then back down. Probably just the storm messing with the equipment. I fired up the snowmobile and headed into the white hell. The trip should have taken 3 hours. GPS said I was making good time, following the coordinates of the climber's last known position. But something felt wrong. The storm was bad, but I've driven through worse. It was something else. Something I couldn't name. The wind sounded strange. Not just howling, but breathing. Like some massive thing was inhaling and exhaling all around me. I pushed the thought away. Lack of oxygen at altitude messes with your head. So does extreme cold. I knew this. 2 hours in, my radio started acting up. Nothing but static, with occasional sounds that almost seemed like words. Words in a language I didn't recognize. I switched it off. Then my GPS started showing weird readings. According to the screen, I was at negative elevation, below sea level. That was impossible. Denali is all mountains and plateaus. Equipment failure. Had to be. The extreme cold was getting to the electronics. But my gut, that instinct you develop after 17 years in the wilderness, was screaming that something was very, very wrong. The aurora borealis started dancing overhead, which was unusual for this early in the evening. Green and blue lights twisting like living things. Beautiful and somehow threatening at the same time. I reached the coordinates just as full darkness hit. What I found there changed everything. The climbers' camp sat in a small clearing, and the first thing I noticed was that it shouldn't have been intact. A storm this violent should have torn the tents apart, scattered gear across half a mile. But everything stood perfectly in place. Tents upright, equipment organized in neat rows, food containers stacked and unopened, like someone had just stepped away for a bathroom break. I killed the snowmobile engine and approached on foot, my flashlight cutting through the driving snow. Hello? Anyone here? The wind died. Just stopped. I froze. In 17 years, I'd never experienced anything like it. A blizzard doesn't just pause. But inside a 50-foot circle around the camp, the air was completely still. Snow fell gently, almost peacefully. Beyond that circle, the storm raged like an angry beast. My breath came out in clouds. My equipment thermometer said 40 below. But when I touched the nearest tent, it was warm. Not just warm, hot enough that my gloved hand could feel it through the insulation. I unzipped the tent. 3 sleeping bags inside, still laid out. Personal items scattered around: books, headlamps, a half-eaten energy bar. One sleeping bag was unzipped like someone had just climbed out. I touched it. Warm. Like body heat. Hello? I called again. My voice sounded muffled, absorbed by the strange stillness. No answer. I checked the other tents. Same thing. Everything in place, everything wrong. The team's radio was still on, battery dead now. Their GPS units were there. Their emergency flares, unused. These were experienced climbers. They wouldn't abandon their equipment unless something made them run. But there were no signs of panic. No overturned gear, no ripped tent fabric, just absence. I set up my thermal imaging, scanning the area for body heat. The screen lit up with color. Human-shaped signatures. 5 of them. About 100 yards away, just outside the circle of stillness. Relief flooded through me. They were alive. I grabbed my medical kit and started toward them, calling out, "Denali Park Service, I'm here to help." The signatures didn't move. As I got closer, I realized they weren't standing. They were lying down. And the heat signature was wrong too, even, too constant. Living bodies don't radiate heat that uniformly. I found the first climber 20 feet from the tree line. He was frozen solid, ice crystals covering every inch of exposed skin. But his eyes were open, and his face was locked in an expression of absolute terror. My training kicked in. I checked for vitals even though I knew. No pulse, no breath. Body temperature around 10 below, dead for at least 48 hours. But his eyes, they looked fresh, like he'd died seconds ago. I found the other 4 within minutes, all frozen, all with that same look of horror. One of them, a woman, probably mid-30s, had her hand raised like she was trying to ward something off. Her mouth was open mid-scream. I've seen frozen corpses before. They don't look like this. The expression relaxes in death, muscles go slack. These people looked like they'd been flash frozen while still alive. I radioed headquarters, or tried to. The satellite phone wouldn't connect. Every frequency was dead static. The emergency beacon wasn't transmitting either. That's when I noticed the footprints. They started at the edge of camp and led into the forest. Not human footprints. Each one was 4 feet long and 18 inches wide, pressed deep into the permafrost, so deep that whatever made them must have weighed tons. I've tracked bears, moose, wolves. These weren't animal tracks. They were shaped like human feet. Just impossibly large. I followed them for about 50 yards. The prints were evenly spaced, a walking stride, not running. Whatever made them had moved through here calmly, deliberately. The tracks led to a massive spruce tree. The trunk was 3 feet thick, and it had been snapped in half. 20 feet up, something had broken this tree at a height where no bear, no moose, nothing natural could reach. The broken end was fresh. Sap still oozed out, freezing into golden crystals. My radio crackled to life. A voice came through, deep, rumbling, speaking words I couldn't understand. The language sounded ancient. Wrong. Then it cut out. I was breathing hard now, not from cold, from fear. I turned back toward camp, and that's when I saw it. Through the falling snow, just at the edge of visibility, a shape. Tall. Very tall. Moving between the trees. I switched on my night vision. The shape showed up as a massive heat signature, but the outline was all wrong. Too big, maybe 20, 25 feet tall. It was walking away from me, but each step shook the ground. I stood there, frozen by something that had nothing to do with cold. Then it stopped, and slowly, so slowly, it turned around. I couldn't see details, just a silhouette against the aurora, but I could feel it looking at me, the same way you can feel someone staring at the back of your neck. My thermal imaging went crazy. The temperature readings spiked to 80 degrees, then dropped to -20, then spiked again. The thing took one step toward me. The ground shook, snow fell from nearby trees. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But I'm a ranger. I don't run. I stood my ground, hand on the flare gun in my belt. The entity took another step, closer. I could see more details now. It was shaped like a human, but wrong. Too tall, proportions off, and it seemed to be made of ice. I could see the aurora shining through parts of its body. My hand found the flare gun. I pulled it out, aimed up, and fired. The flare shot into the sky, brilliant red against the storm. The entity shrieked, a sound that made my bones vibrate. It raised one massive arm. And then the storm came back. The wind hit like a physical blow, knocking me off my feet. Snow hammered down so hard I couldn't see my own hands. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds. When I managed to get up and look, the entity was gone. Just massive footprints. And the broken tree. And 5 frozen corpses, with terror frozen on their faces. I ran back to my snowmobile, hands shaking so hard I could barely work the ignition. All my scientific training, all my rational explanations, all my skepticism, gone. My mother's stories weren't fairy tales. The Tornarsuk were real. I made it back to my cabin by midnight, though my GPS claimed I'd been traveling for 6 hours. My watch said 3. Time itself felt broken out there. I tried every communication channel. Nothing. The satellite phone showed full bars but wouldn't connect. The emergency radio picked up only static and occasional sounds that might have been breathing. I was completely isolated. I documented everything in my log, trying to stay professional. Found 5 deceased climbers, apparent hypothermia but unusual presentation. Observed anomalous meteorological phenomena. Equipment malfunction widespread. Requesting immediate backup and evacuation. The words looked insane even as I wrote them. I couldn't mention what I'd really seen. They'd think the cold had gotten to me. Maybe it had. I heated soup on my propane stove, trying to think rationally. Hypothermia can cause hallucinations. Extreme stress affects perception. There had to be a logical explanation. But that footprint, the broken tree, the bodies. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that massive shape turning to look at me. Around 3 a.m., I heard something outside. Footsteps. Heavy ones. Circling the cabin, I grabbed my flashlight and looked out the window. Nothing visible in the storm. But the footsteps continued steady, patient. Walking around and around, then they stopped, right outside my door. I stood there, flashlight in one hand, my service weapon in the other, waiting. A shadow fell across the window. Too tall to be human. Something scraped against the cabin wall, a sound like ice on wood, slow and deliberate. Then it spoke. The voice was deep, so deep I felt it in my chest, rather than heard it with my ears. It spoke in Inuktitut, my mother's language. Words I hadn't heard since I was a child. You have seen too much. Victor Coldstone. It knew my name. Those who see must choose. Join the watched, or join the watchers. What are you? My voice came out as a whisper. We are the guardians, the frozen judges, the keepers of the boundary. What boundary? Between your world and what lies beneath the ice. The shadow moved away from the window. The footsteps resumed, circling. I realized I was crying. Not from fear. From something deeper, like my mind was trying to protect itself by shutting down. The steps faded into the storm. I didn't move until dawn. When gray light finally came, I went outside. Massive handprints pressed into the cabin wall, each finger as thick as my leg. The surrounding snow was undisturbed, These prints started and ended at the wall, like the thing had simply materialized. My radio crackled. Victor? Victor, do you copy? Danny. Danny Nuka, the backup ranger. His voice sounded strange, distant. Danny, yes, I copy. I need immediate extraction. I've got 5 bodies, and Victor, I've been tracking you. You've been walking in circles for 18 hours. What? No. I've been at my cabin since midnight. Your beacon shows you at the climbers' camp. You've been there all night, moving in a loop around the site. My blood went cold. Danny, I'm at my cabin. I drove back last night. Long silence. Then, Victor, your snowmobile is still at the camp. According to your tracker, you never left. I looked outside. My snowmobile was parked where I'd left it last night. Except it wasn't. Not really. As I watched, it seemed to flicker, like a bad television signal. There one moment, gone the next. Danny, something's wrong here. Really wrong. I know what you saw, Danny said softly. I'm coming to you. Don't trust what you see. Don't trust time. And whatever you do, don't go back to that camp. What do you know about this? Everything. I'll explain when I get there. Stay inside. Stay warm. And Victor? Don't listen if you hear voices. The radio went dead. I looked at my watch. 7 a.m. I looked again. 3 p.m. Another glance. 7 a.m. Time was breaking down. I heard my daughter's voice outside. Daddy, Daddy, I'm cold. Can you help me? Sarah, my 8-year-old daughter, who was in Anchorage, 300 miles away. Daddy, please, I'm so cold. I grabbed my coat and reached for the door handle, then stopped. Sarah was in Anchorage. This wasn't real. Daddy? The voice was crying now. Why won't you help me? My hand shook on the door handle. Every parental instinct screamed at me to go to her. Please, Daddy, it hurts. The cold hurts. I backed away from the door, hands over my ears. The crying continued for an hour, then stopped. When I looked out the window, I saw small footprints in the snow, child-sized, leading away into the forest. At the tree line, I saw Sarah standing there. She waved at me. Then she turned and walked into the trees. And she didn't look right. Her proportions were wrong. Too tall, arms too long. Not my daughter. Something wearing her shape. I sat on the floor, gun in my lap, and waited for Danny. He arrived at sunset. Or what I thought was sunset. Time had lost all meaning. Danny was in his 50s, Inupiat like my mother, and one of the most experienced rangers in Alaska. He came in stamping snow off his boots, took one look at me, and nodded. You've seen them. I don't know what I saw. The Tornarsuk, ice giants, the guardians. He sat down across from me. I need to tell you something, Victor. Something I should have told you years ago. How long have you known about them? Since 1955. He smiled at my expression. I know how that sounds, but it's true. Let me show you something. He pulled out an old photograph. Black and white, faded. Showed a group of rangers standing in front of this very cabin. One of them looked exactly like Danny. Same face. Same build. That's my grandfather, I said. Right? No. Danny's voice was gentle. That's me. I was part of the expedition that came here in 1955. We were studying unusual seismic activity. Instead, we found the truth about Denali. I stared at him. He didn't look 70+ years old. The Tornarsuk gave me a choice, Danny continued. The same choice they're giving you. My team, 12 people, were going to die, frozen and preserved forever as a warning to others. The giants offered me a deal. I become a watcher, a guardian who warns people away from sacred sites. In exchange, my team goes free. And you took it. I took it. I've been aging slowly ever since, 1 year for every 10. Sustained by the same supernatural cold that powers them. That's impossible. You saw something 20 feet tall made of living ice, and you're arguing about what's impossible? Danny laughed, but it was sad. Victor, they want you. Someone with your skills, your heritage, your connection to this land. You're perfect for the role. What if I refuse? He looked away. Then they take you anyway. But not as a guardian. As one of the preserved, frozen, conscious, aware, but unable to move or speak, forever. And my family? The Tornarsuk can reach anywhere in Alaska. If you refuse, your daughter becomes part of the warning too. My hands clenched into fists. You're saying I don't have a choice. You have a choice. Just not a good one. Danny stood up. They're coming, Victor. The council is gathering. You need to decide soon. Council? There are 7 of them, ancient beyond measure. They want to meet you. As if on cue, the temperature inside the cabin dropped 30 degrees in seconds. My breath became fog. Ice formed on the windows from the inside. The aurora borealis outside intensified until it was bright as daylight. And I heard them coming. 7 sets of footsteps, shaking the earth. The Tornarsuk Council had arrived. They stood in a semicircle around my cabin, each one 30 feet tall, bodies made of ice so clear I could see the aurora shining through them. Their eyes glowed with blue light that hurt to look at. Their breath came out as blizzards. Danny and I stood in the doorway. I felt like an insect looking up at mountains. The central giant spoke. Its voice was the sound of glaciers calving, of ice sheets cracking, of avalanches roaring down mountainsides. But I understood every word. Somehow, I understood. Victor Coldstone, son of Amaruk, you have crossed the boundary. You have seen what must not be seen. I was doing my job, I said. My voice shook. Searching for missing people. Those people trespassed on sacred ground. They disturbed the burial sites. They woke the sleeping ones. What sleeping ones? The giant gestured. The ground split open behind them, revealing a massive cavern. Inside, I saw faces pressed against ice. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all preserved, all aware, all screaming silently. The violators, the giant said. Those who refused to respect the boundary. Those who took what was not theirs. Those who disturbed our purpose. What purpose? We guard the gate. Below this ice lies the old world. The world before your world. The things that slept when the glaciers came. They must never wake. Another giant spoke. Voice like winter wind. Climate change weakens our power. The ice melts. The barriers thin. Soon, the old ones will wake. We need watchers. We need guardians who can warn your people away. I'm just one person. You are Inupiat. You carry the old blood. You understand both worlds. The central giant leaned down, its face filling my vision. And you have something to lose. This makes you strong. My daughter, Sarah Coldstone, 8 years old, lives in Anchorage with her mother. The giant's eyes pulsed. We can reach her anywhere in Alaska. In dreams, in storms, in the cold that seeps under doors. Rage flooded through me. If you hurt her, we offer a bargain. Become our watcher. Warn away the trespassers. Protect the sacred sites. In exchange, your daughter lives untouched. Your family remains safe. And those preserved souls, it gestured to the cavern. We release 100 of them, a mercy. And if I refuse? You join them. Your daughter joins them. Everyone you love, frozen in the ice, aware for eternity. And the rescue team coming to find you, they join as well. What rescue team? Danny touched my arm. I called them before I left. Standard protocol. They're 20 miles out. The giants knew. Of course they knew. Choose, Victor Coldstone. Choose now. The aurora fades with dawn. I looked at Danny. He nodded slowly. How long? I asked. How long would I serve? Until another suitable guardian is found. Until the ice reclaims the world. Until the end. The giant's voice softened, almost gentle. Time has no meaning for us. A human lifetime is but a moment. You would age slowly, suffer little, and you would save many. I'd lose my family, my life, everything. You would gain purpose, power, understanding. The giant showed me a vision, me, standing on a mountaintop, able to see the aurora as living beings, able to communicate with the Tornarsuk, able to sense when the sacred sites were threatened. You would become more than human, less than us, something in between. I thought of Sarah, her laugh, her smile, the way she hugged me when I came home from long assignments. I thought of the rescue team coming to find me, good people, rangers I'd worked with for years. I thought of those faces in the ice, trapped, aware, forever. I need something in return, I said. If I do this, I want to be able to contact my daughter once a year, just to know she's okay. The giants conferred in their language of avalanches and cracking ice. Once per year, on the winter solstice, you may send dreams, She will feel your presence, but you may never see her in flesh again. And Danny, he's served long enough. Let him rest." Danny's eyes widened. He hadn't expected that. The central giant studied me for a long moment. "You bargain for another? This shows strength." "We accept." "Danny Nuka, you are released. Your service ends this day." Danny sagged with relief. "Thank you," he whispered. "Victor Coldstone, do you accept? Will you become the Watcher of Denali?" I took a deep breath. Let it out as frost. "I accept." The cold hit me like a physical thing. Not painful, more like falling into deep water. It poured into my mouth, my nose, my eyes. I felt it spreading through my blood, settling into my bones. My body temperature dropped. My skin took on a faint blue tint. My eyes changed suddenly. I could see heat, see spirits, see the aurora as living rivers of light. I could understand the language of ice and stone, and I knew, bone deep, where every sacred site in Alaska lay. Dozens of them, hundreds, all connected, all protected by beings like these. The transformation lasted seconds, but felt like years. When it ended, I was still me. But more. Changed. The central giant nodded approval. "Welcome, Watcher. Your service begins now." They showed me the rest. The rescue team was 15 miles out. I would meet them, tell them the climbers died in an avalanche, bodies unrecoverable, area too dangerous. Everyone would believe me because I was Victor Coldstone, 17-year veteran, who had never lied in a report. The area would be closed. The sacred sites protected. The climbers' deaths would be ruled misfortune, not supernatural intervention. And I would remain, forever watching, forever guarding. The giants faded into the aurora. The ground sealed itself. The temperature rose to merely freezing. Danny looked at me with tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry it had to be you." "It's okay," I said. And I meant it. "Someone has to do it." He smiled. "I'll check on Sarah sometimes. Make sure she's okay." "Thank you." We stood there as the aurora faded, and the first light of dawn touched the mountains. Danny pulled off his ranger jacket and handed it to me. This was keeping me alive. I don't need it anymore. As I watched, he aged. Not dramatically, just settling into the years he'd been holding back. His hair went fully white. Lines deepened on his face. "How does it feel?" I asked. "Like coming home." He took a deep breath. "I'm going to sleep for a week. Then maybe visit my great-grandchildren. I haven't seen them in 40 years. The rescue team found us 2 hours later. By then, Danny and I had our story straight. Avalanche. Climbers caught in the slide. Bodies buried under tons of ice and snow. Recovery impossible in current conditions. They believed every word. The official report listed 5 deaths due to extreme weather and avalanche conditions. The area around Wonder Lake received a temporary closure designation for geological instability. My observations about equipment malfunction were attributed to the extreme cold and electromagnetic interference from the cold aurora. No one questioned it. I was Victor Coldstone, 17 years of solid service, 127 successful rescues. If I said it was an avalanche, it was an avalanche. The climbers' families got closure. A story about how their loved ones died doing what they loved, in one of the most beautiful places on Earth. It was kinder than the truth. I requested permanent assignment to Wonder Lake. My supervisor thought I was crazy, but approved it. Someone needed to monitor the area anyway. I wrote to my ex-wife, telling her I'd be out of contact for a while. Long assignment, limited communication. She understood. She was used to it. I wrote to Sarah every week, but I didn't mail the letters. I just needed to write them. To pretend I could still be her father. On the winter solstice, I stood on the mountain under the aurora and thought about her as hard as I could. Somewhere in Anchorage, she woke up from a dream about her daddy, feeling warm and safe. That has to be enough. The changes continued gradually. My body temperature stabilized at 85 degrees. My skin kept that faint blue tint that people noticed but dismissed as lighting or cold exposure. I stopped aging at the normal rate. I can see things now, heat signatures without equipment, the spirits that move through the wilderness. The aurora borealis speaks to me warnings when someone approaches sacred ground. I'm not human anymore, not fully, but I'm not one of them either. I'm something in between. A bridge, a guardian, Other watchers contacted me. There are 12 of us across Alaska. Some have served for decades, one for over a century. We're a network, connected by the aurora, warning each other when tourists get too close to dangerous areas. We save lives. More than anyone knows. Sometimes I see the Tornarsuk. They walk the mountains at night, checking the seals on the old places, making sure nothing wakes. They nod to me now. Acknowledgement between guardians. Danny passed away last spring. Peacefully, surrounded by family who thought he was their eccentric great-uncle who'd lived as a hermit for years. I went to the funeral in disguise, thick clothes to hide my blue skin, sunglasses to hide my changed eyes. His great-granddaughter looked just like him. I get reports sometimes, hikers who ignore warnings and end up hypothermic, climbers who insist on accessing closed areas and trigger avalanches. Each time, I wonder if I should have tried harder to stop them. But I can't save everyone. I can only guard the boundaries. Last month, the geology team wanted to study the permafrost around Wonder Lake. I redirected them to a safe area 50 miles away. They complained but complied. They'll never know what I saved them from. Climate change worries me. The ice is melting faster than it should. The Tornarsuk are growing restless. They speak of the old ones stirring beneath the glaciers. I don't know what will happen if the ice disappears completely. If the barriers fail. If the things below wake up. But I'll be here, watching, warning, guarding. For Sarah, for Alaska, for everyone who doesn't know what's really out there. My name is Victor Coldstone. I'm 41 years old, though I'll probably look 41 for the next century. I'm a ranger in Denali National Park, and I'm the watcher of the sacred places. If you're planning to visit Alaska, please respect the closure signs. Don't ignore warnings about dangerous areas. When rangers tell you a region is off limits, there's always a reason. Sometimes that reason is avalanche danger or wildlife protection. And sometimes it's something you don't want to meet in the darkness under the aurora. The frost giants are real, and they're watching, always watching. My name is Isabella Stormwind, and I've spent 13 years protecting the waters of Glacier Bay National Park. Most people think being a park ranger is about giving tours and checking permits. They don't know about the real work, the long nights monitoring seal populations, the hours spent watching glaciers calve massive chunks of ice into freezing water, the constant battle against weather that can kill you in minutes. I'm 36 now, and I live alone in a research station on an unnamed island 15 miles from the nearest human being. Some people call it lonely. I call it necessary. 3 years ago, my husband David died in these waters. He was a ranger too, the best I've ever known. The official report said equipment failure during a storm, but David was too careful for that. He'd been investigating what he called strange readings near the deep fjords. His last radio message was broken up by static, but I heard him say something about the water being alive. I stopped believing in my grandmother's old stories after that. She was Tlingit, full of tales about Kushtaka otter spirits that could steal your soul and turn you into one of them. Beautiful nonsense, I thought. David died because of bad weather and worse luck, nothing more. But standing on my boat deck that October morning in 1991, watching fog roll across the water like something breathing, I felt the first crack in my certainty. The radio crackled. "Isabella, this is Coast Guard Station Juneau. We've lost contact with the marine biology team studying seal behavior in Sector 7. Last transmission was unusual." I grabbed the handset. Define unusual. They reported seals acting strangely, following what they described as a human-like figure in the water. Then their emergency beacon activated. We found their research vessel 30 minutes ago empty, engine running, equipment on, coffee still hot on the stove. My blood went cold. "Any sign of the crew?" "None. We need you to conduct a search. You know those waters better than anyone." I looked at the fog bank moving toward me. The temperature had dropped 15 degrees in the last hour. The tide was coming in fast, 25 feet of water movement that could trap you against ice walls or sweep you out to sea. "There's a storm coming," I said. "We know. That's why we're sending you instead of waiting. You've got maybe 6 hours of safe travel time." I thought about saying no. The rational part of my brain, the part with a PhD in marine biology, the part that had published 23 papers in peer-reviewed journals, was screaming that this was dangerous and stupid. But another part of me, older and quieter, remembered David's last message, the water being alive. "I'm on my way," I said. I suited up in my dry suit, the heavy neoprene that might buy me 15 minutes if I ended up in the 38-degree water. I checked my equipment, sonar, GPS, underwater cameras, satellite phone, emergency shelter, 10 days of food I wouldn't need if things went bad. The boat's engine coughed to life, and I headed toward Sector 7. The fog swallowed me within minutes. That's when I heard it, a sound like laughter, but not quite human. It echoed across the water, seeming to come from everywhere at once. I told myself it was just seals. They can make noises that sound almost human when they're hunting. But seals don't usually hunt in perfect geometric formations. I saw them through a gap in the fog, maybe 50 harbor seals, swimming in a precise circle around something I couldn't see. Their heads were up, watching me with eyes that seemed too intelligent, too aware. The temperature gauge on my boat suddenly spiked. The water outside was reading 70 degrees Fahrenheit. That was impossible. These waters never got above 45, even in summer. I grabbed my underwater camera and lowered it into the warm pocket of water. The screen showed something that made my hands shake. At the bottom of the fjord, 300 feet down, lights were glowing. Not bioluminescence, electric lights, arranged in patterns that looked almost like streets in a city. And moving between those lights were shapes. Human-shaped, but wrong. They moved too smoothly, too quickly, like they were swimming through air instead of water. One of them looked up at the camera. It had David's face. I jerked the camera out of the water so fast I nearly dropped it. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Hypothermia can cause hallucinations. Lack of sleep does the same thing. I'd been working 70-hour weeks since David died, trying to outrun my grief. That's what I told myself as I navigated through the fog toward the missing team's last known position. The research vessel appeared suddenly, emerging from the mist like a ghost ship. It was anchored in a spot I knew well, or thought I did. The depth here should have been maybe 100 feet. But the anchor chain kept going down, disappearing into water that my sonar said was unmeasurable. "Marine biology team, this is Ranger Stormwind. Do you copy?" My voice sounded small against the fog. Silence. Just the gentle slap of water against both hulls and the distant groaning of glaciers. I tied up alongside their boat and climbed aboard. Everything looked normal at first. The engine was off now, but the keys were still in the ignition. A mug of coffee sat on the dashboard, still slightly warm. Navigation equipment blinked steadily. Then I saw the deck. Seal carcasses were laid out in a perfect spiral pattern, 12 of them, arranged with their heads pointing toward the center. Their eyes had been removed with surgical precision, and in the middle of the spiral, written in what looked like fish blood, were words in Tlingit. "The water calls its children home." My grandmother used to say that same phrase when she told stories about the Kushtaka. I grabbed my radio. "Coast Guard, I've found the vessel. Signs of, I don't know what. Ritualistic behavior maybe? Possible psychological break among the crew." Static answered me. Heavy, thick static that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Then David's voice came through, clear as day. "Bella, you need to leave. Right now." I dropped the radio. David had called me Bella. Nobody else did. Nobody alive, anyway. The radio crackled again, but it was just static now. I picked it up with shaking hands and tried every frequency. Nothing but that rhythmic pulse, like something breathing. That's when I noticed the handprints. They were everywhere on the railings, the cabin windows, the deck itself. But they weren't quite right. The fingers were too long, and between them I could see the faint webbing of something that wasn't entirely human. The prints were still wet, leaving slick trails that glistened in the weak sunlight filtering through the fog. I heard a splash behind me and spun around. Something was swimming alongside my boat, something big. I caught a glimpse of sleek brown fur, but when it surfaced, I saw a human face, young, female, terrified. One of the marine biologists. "Help me," she gasped. "Please, I can't, I don't want to." She dove under the water before I could reach her. I grabbed a rescue line and leaned over the railing, searching the murky green depths. She surfaced again, but this time her face was changing. Her eyes were moving further apart, her nose flattening. She opened her mouth to scream, and I saw that her teeth had become sharp and pointed. "It hurts," she whispered. "The transformation hurts so much." Then she was gone, leaving only ripples and a sound that was half sob, half bark. I stood there, frozen. Every scientific principle I'd ever learned colliding with what I'd just seen. People don't transform into animals. It's impossible. But I'd watched it happen. My sonar started going crazy. It was detecting dozens of large objects moving beneath both boats. They were circling, getting closer with each pass. I ran back to my vessel and started the engine. It coughed, sputtered, died. I tried again, nothing. The fog was getting thicker, pressing against the boat like something solid. And in that fog, I started seeing shapes. Human shapes, but they moved wrong on all fours. Backs arched, heads low to the ground. My GPS suddenly showed I was in the middle of the Bering Sea, 500 miles from where I actually was. The compass spun in circles. The temperature gauge now read 90 degrees, then 30, then 70, changing every second. Something climbed onto the research vessel's deck. I couldn't see it clearly through the fog, but I heard the wet slap of its feet, or paws, or whatever it had. I heard it breathing, a sound halfway between a whistle and a wheeze. "Isabella Stormwind," it said in a voice that sounded like water flowing over rocks. "Daughter of the Tlingit, widow of David Running Deer, you have been chosen." "Chosen for what?" I managed to ask. "To join us, to protect the waters as your husband does, to become what you were always meant to be." The fog parted slightly, and I saw it. The creature was the size of a large man, but shaped like an otter, standing upright on hind legs that bent wrong. Its fur was sleek and brown, its paws had fingers, and its face was almost human. Almost. "Your husband didn't die," it said. "He transcended. He swims with us now, protecting these waters, keeping the secrets that must be kept. He's happy, Isabella. He wants you to join him." I found my voice. "That's not possible." I saw his body. "You saw what we wanted you to see. The body of a seal, transformed to look like him. We do this sometimes, to protect our secret. But David is alive, in the way that matters. Would you like to see him?" Before I could answer, the water beside my boat erupted. David climbed onto my deck. He looked exactly as I remembered, tall, broad-shouldered, with that crooked smile that had made me fall in love with him. His ranger uniform was dry despite coming out of the water. He walked toward me with steady steps. "Bella," he said, "I've missed you so much." Every instinct I had screamed that this wasn't real. But it looked like him. Sounded like him. When he reached out to touch my face, his hand was warm. "You're dead," I whispered. "I buried you. You buried a shell. I'm more alive now than I ever was." He gestured at the fog-shrouded water. "Down there, in the deep places, we live for hundreds of years. We protect the oceans, keep the balance, guard against the humans who would destroy everything. I didn't die, Bella. I finally understood my purpose." The otter creature moved closer. "Your husband volunteered for transformation. He was dying slowly from the guilt of what his job required, managing fisheries, enforcing rules that still allowed overfishing, watching the glaciers melt. He wanted to make a real difference. I backed away from both of them. This is hypothermia. I'm hallucinating. None of this is real." David's expression hardened. "You always were too stubborn, too locked into your scientific worldview. Your grandmother tried to teach you, but you wouldn't listen. Even now, with the truth standing in front of you, you deny it." He moved faster than any human could, crossing the deck in a blur. His hand grabbed my wrist, and I felt something wrong with his skin. It was too smooth, too slick, like he was covered in a thin layer of oil. "Feel that?" he asked. "That's real. I'm real, and you're running out of time to make a choice." I yanked my arm away and stumbled backward. "What choice?" The otter creature spoke again. "The transformation begins whether you consent or not. You've been in our waters too long, breathed our fog, touched our vessels. The change is already starting in your cells. You can fight it and die in agony, or you can accept it and live forever." "You're insane," I said. "Both of you." David's face twisted with something that might have been pity or contempt. "Then explain why you can hold your breath for 5 minutes now. Explain why the cold water doesn't bother you anymore. Explain why you understand what the seals are saying when they call to each other." And the terrifying thing was, I had noticed those changes. I'd attributed them to adrenaline, to stress, to anything but the impossible truth. My satellite phone started ringing. I grabbed it, desperate for any connection to the normal world. "Hello?" a voice said. It was mine, my own voice, speaking to me from the phone. "This is Isabella Stormwind. I'm sorry to inform you that Isabella Stormwind died today in a boating accident. Her body may never be recovered. Please notify her next of kin." I threw the phone into the water. "The Coast Guard will find your boat empty," David said softly. "Just like they found the research team's boat. Just like they found mine. You're already dead in their records, Bella. The only question is whether you'll be dead in reality or dead to the surface world." The fog suddenly lifted, and I saw them. Dozens of otters surrounded both boats, but they weren't swimming normally. They floated vertically in the water, heads above the surface, watching me with human intelligence in their eyes. Some of them were crying, tears running down their furry faces. "Those are the research team," the creature said. "They're still adjusting to their new forms. It takes time to accept what you've become. Some never do. But eventually the ocean soothes all pain." One of the otters barked at me. I understood it, not the words, but the meaning. It was begging me to save it, to reverse what had been done. But even as I watched, it dove under the water and didn't come back up. When it surfaced again 30 minutes later, the human intelligence in its eyes was gone. It had become a true animal. "That's what happens when you fight the change," David said. "You lose yourself completely. But if you accept it, you retain who you are. You just become more." I heard a sound like thunder. The glacier behind us was calving massive chunks of ice, the size of houses, breaking off and crashing into the water. But the pattern was wrong. The ice was breaking in rhythm, like a heartbeat. And in the exposed glacier face, I saw them, faces carved in the ice, screaming silently. "Those are the ones who refused the choice," the creature said. "Frozen in their moment of death, preserved forever in the ice. The glaciers remember everything that happens in these waters." My boat's engine suddenly roared to life. I hadn't touched it. "You're being given a gift," David said. "A chance to escape. Take it, and you'll forget all of this. You'll make it back to your station with a story about rescuing yourself from equipment failure. Life will go back to normal." "What's the catch?" I asked. "The Coast Guard search team arrives tomorrow morning. If you're here when they come, they'll die. All of them. We can't let the secret spread. We can't let humans discover what lives in these waters." The otter creature nodded. "Leave now, forget everything, and they live. Stay to warn them, and everyone dies, including you. Choose." I looked at David, or the thing wearing David's face. "And if I accept the transformation, then you stay forever. You protect these waters. You make sure no one else has to make this choice. You become a guardian instead of a victim." The engine was running. The fog was starting to clear. I could see a path out of here, back to safety, back to my normal life. But I could also see the faces in the ice. I could hear the otters crying in their transformed agony. And I knew David was telling the truth about the Coast Guard. Whatever these creatures were, they had killed before and would kill again to protect their secret. I turned off the engine. "I'm not leaving," I said. "But I'm not transforming either. I'm going to find a way to stop you." David smiled, and for the first time, I saw that his teeth were pointed. "Oh, Bella, that's exactly what I said 3 years ago, and look at me now." The water around my boat began to boil. The boiling water wasn't hot, it was alive. I watched in horror as it formed into shapes, hands reaching up from the depths, trying to pull my boat down. The hull groaned under impossible pressure. "Last chance," the otter creature said. "Dive into the water and complete the transformation willingly, or we drag you down and let you drown first. The transformation works either way, but drowning is so much more painful." I grabbed my flare gun. "Stay back." David laughed. It was his real laugh, the one I'd heard 1,000 times. And that made it so much worse. "Bella, we're in water. We can hold our breath for hours. Fire won't save you." But I wasn't aiming at them. I fired the flare straight up into the air, the bright red light cutting through the fog like a knife. The Coast Guard would see it. They'd come running, right into the trap, but at least they'd know something was wrong. "Foolish," the creature hissed. "Now everyone dies." The water hands grabbed my boat and pulled. Hard. The vessel tilted 45 degrees, and I slid across the deck, barely catching myself on the railing. My emergency pack fell into the water, along with most of my equipment. "Stop," I screamed. "I'll do it. I'll transform. Just don't hurt anyone else." The pulling stopped. The boat rocked back to level. David climbed fully onto the deck, and now I could see what he really was. His skin was splitting at the seams, revealing sleek fur beneath. His hands were becoming paws before my eyes. But his face was still human enough to break my heart. "You mean it?" he asked. "Yes," I lied. He knew I was lying. I saw it in his eyes, but he nodded anyway. "Then come to me, take my hand, step into the water." I walked toward him slowly, trying to think of any way out. The flare was still burning high above us, a beacon of false hope. The Coast Guard helicopter would arrive in maybe 15 minutes. These creatures would kill everyone aboard, unless I could figure out their weakness. My grandmother's stories came back to me in a rush. The Kushtaka could shapeshift, could survive underwater, could live for centuries. But they had one vulnerability. They needed the water to complete the transformation. On land, they were powerful, but not invincible. "One question first," I said, stopping just out of David's reach. "Why do you need people to choose? Why not just transform us all by force?" The otter creature's eyes narrowed. "Who said we need you to choose?" David just did. He said, "I had to step into the water willingly. That means something. That means you can't force me unless I give consent somehow." David's expression hardened. "Bella, don't." I pulled out the knife I kept strapped to my ankle and slashed my palm open. Blood dripped onto the deck, my boat, my territory. "I claim this vessel under maritime law and Tlingit tradition. I name it sacred ground. You cannot force me to leave." The creature screamed, a sound like metal tearing. "You can't. You're not a shaman." My grandmother was. She taught me the words before she died, even though I didn't believe. I believe now. I spoke in Tlingit, words I'd thought were just pretty sounds when I was a child. But they had power. I felt it rolling off my tongue like thunder. The water around my boat stopped moving. The fog pulled back. David staggered, his transformation reversing slightly. "You're making a mistake," he said. And now he sounded like my husband again. Really like him, not the thing pretending. "Bella, they'll kill you for this. The council won't let you defy them." "Then let them try." The water beside my boat exploded upward in a geyser 50 feet high. When it fell back down, something massive was floating there. The otter creature I'd been talking to was tiny compared to this thing. This was something ancient, something that had been sleeping in the deepest parts of the fjord. It looked like an otter the size of a whale, but its face was a nightmare, mix of human and animal, with too many eyes and too many teeth. When it spoke, the words came from everywhere at once. "Isabella Stormwind, daughter of Maria Stormwind. 7 generations of your family have served as guardians. You cannot deny your birthright. Watch me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Then I will take what is owed." The creature dove, and the resulting wave nearly capsized both boats. When it surfaced again, it had something in its mouth, a human body, limp and pale. It dropped the body on my deck. It was one of the marine biologists. Still human, not transformed. "Dead. Every hour you refuse," the creature said, "one more dies. The research team, the Coast Guard when they arrive, every boat in Glacier Bay, every person who depends on you to protect them, all dead because of your stubbornness." I looked at the body, at David, at the water teeming with transformed humans. "There has to be another way." "There is," the creature said, and its voice almost sounded gentle. "Accept your role. Become the bridge between worlds. Protect us from humanity and humanity from us. It is what your grandmother did, what her mother did, what you were born to do. And if I refuse, then everyone dies, and we find someone else, someone who will say yes." David grabbed my shoulders. "Bella, please. I've seen what happens when they choose someone else. They target children. They make the transformation so painful, so traumatic, that the person loses their mind. You have the strength to keep your humanity. The next person might not. You're lying." "I'm not. God help me, I'm not." Tears ran down his face, real tears, human tears. I volunteered because they showed me what they'd do to a kindergarten teacher in Juneau if I didn't. They would have turned her into one of them, and she would have transformed every child in her class. I couldn't let that happen. The helicopter sound was getting closer. I could see its lights through the fog. "Choose," the ancient creature said. "Now." I thought about my grandmother, who had lived to be 97 and spent every summer swimming in these waters. I thought about the faces in the ice, the people who had refused and died screaming. I thought about the kindergarten teacher and her class. I thought about David, who I'd loved more than life itself, who had made this choice to save strangers. "I'll do it," I said. "But on my terms. I keep my human form most of the time. I keep my job, my research, my life on the surface. I only transform when absolutely necessary. And you never, ever threaten innocent people again." The creature's many eyes blinked slowly. "Acceptable. The ritual will begin now." "Wait." I grabbed the radio. The Coast Guard helicopter was almost here. "Let me send them away first. Let me save them." Quickly, I picked up the handset. "Coast Guard, this is Ranger Stormwind. I've found the research vessel. All crew recovered safely, hypothermia and confusion, but alive. Returning to base. Abort search and rescue." Static. Then, "Copy that, Ranger Stormwind. Good work. We'll meet you at base for debrief." I'd just lied to save their lives. The real research crew was dead or transformed. But the helicopter turned away. David took my hand. "It's time." We dove into the water together. The transformation hurt worse than anything I'd ever felt. My bones bent and reformed, my skin split and sealed, my lungs burned as they learned to extract oxygen from water. I drowned and came back to life a dozen times in those first few minutes. But David was there, holding me, keeping me focused. And I held on to my humanity with everything I had. When I finally surfaced, I was still mostly human. But I could breathe underwater for hours now. My body temperature regulated itself automatically. I could swim faster than any Olympic athlete. And I could hear the whales singing, the otters chattering, the secrets the ocean whispered to those willing to listen. The ancient creature regarded me with something that might have been approval. "You are strong. Good. You will need that strength. The waters are dying, Isabella Stormwind. The humans kill faster than we can protect. You will be the voice that makes them listen." "What about the research team?" "Gone. They resisted too hard. Their minds broke during transformation. We released them as true otters. Without human consciousness. It was a mercy. I wanted to scream, to fight, to refuse this nightmare, but I'd made my choice. Now I had to live with it. The Coast Guard found me 3 hours later, unconscious on an ice floe, suffering from severe hypothermia. My boat had sunk, equipment failure, I told them. The research vessel had capsized in the storm, all crew lost to the sea. They called me a hero for surviving. They gave me a medal for my 13 years of service. They never knew that I'd died that day and been reborn as something else. I kept my job, kept my research. But now I work for two masters, the human world above and the ancient one below. In summer, I'm a ranger, protecting tourists and monitoring wildlife. In winter, I swim with David and the others in the underwater cities the Kushtaka have built over centuries. It's been 3 years since that day. The glaciers are melting faster now. The Kushtaka are restless, angry at what humans are doing to their waters. And I'm the only thing standing between their rage and the innocent people who live along these coasts. Sometimes I wonder if David felt this way, torn between two worlds, belonging fully to neither. Sometimes I hate him for volunteering, for leaving me alone with this impossible responsibility. But mostly I understand, because now I've seen what I never could when I was fully human. The ocean is alive. It remembers everything, and it's watching us destroy it, year by year, degree by degree. Last week, a new marine biology team requested permission to study Sector 7. I denied the permit. They'll try again, of course. They always do. And if they push too hard, if they get too close to the Kushtaka breeding grounds, I'll have to make another choice. And this time, David won't be there to help me make it. The fog is rolling in again tonight. I can hear the otters calling to each other, their voices mixing human words with animal sounds. I can hear the glaciers groaning as they calve into the warming water. And beneath it all, I can hear the ancient creature's voice, reminding me of my duty. Some nights, I stand at the edge of the water and think about just walking in, completing the transformation, leaving my human life behind completely, like David did. But I don't, because someone has to stand in the middle. Someone has to speak for both worlds. And my grandmother taught me that the hardest path is often the right one. So I watch, I wait, I protect, and I pray that I never have to choose again. But I know I will. The ocean always demands its price, and eventually, everyone who loves these waters pays it. My name is Isabella Stormwind. I'm a park ranger at Glacier Bay National Park. And I'm something else entirely. If you ever visit Alaska's remote fjords, if you see seals swimming in impossible patterns or fog that seems to reach for you, listen to the warnings. Turn back. Some waters aren't meant for human eyes. And if you see a woman swimming alone in water that should kill her, a woman who stays under for minutes without surfacing, who speaks to the otters like old friends, don't try to save her. She's exactly where she chose to be. My name is Marcus Ravenwolf, and I've been a ranger at Katmai National Park for 21 years. I know bears better than most people know their own families. I've stared down charging grizzlies, talked tourists through close encounters, and spent more nights in bear country than in my own bed. Bears don't scare me anymore. They're predictable. They follow rules. But what I saw during the blood moon of September 1989 didn't follow any rules I knew. I'm Yupik, born and raised in Alaska. My father taught me to respect the old stories, tales of Aklut, the wolf whale spirits that hunted during red moons. I always thought they were just stories, the kind elders tell to keep kids from wandering off at night. My father died when I was 12, torn apart by a brown bear while we were fishing. I saw it happen. I saw the blood, heard his screams, watched him disappear into the brush. That's why I became a ranger. I needed to understand bears, to predict them, to never let anyone else die the way my father did. The Valley of 10,000 Smokes is where I work now, a remote monitoring station 30 miles from the main ranger station at Brooks Falls. It's volcanic country, all ash fields and smoking vents, where the ground stays warm even in winter. During salmon season, bears gather here by the hundreds. It's the best place in the world to study them. On September 14th, I got a call that changed everything. Marcus, we've lost contact with the research team at Valley Station, my supervisor said through the crackling radio. Last transmission was 2 days ago. They reported aggressive bear behavior, something about coordinated hunting patterns. Coordinated? I frowned. Bears don't hunt in packs. I know, but we need you to fly out there and check on them. Storm's coming in, so you've got maybe 12 hours before we can't get you out. I should mention, there was going to be a total lunar eclipse that night, a blood moon, the kind that turns the sky red and makes animals act strange. My grandmother used to say the Aklut walked during blood moons, possessing animals, hunting on land instead of in the sea. But I didn't believe in Aklut. I believed in science, in behavior patterns, in facts. The bush plane dropped me at Valley Station just before sunset. The pilot looked nervous as I unloaded my gear, high-powered rifle, bear spray, thermal imaging equipment, emergency shelter, standard safety equipment for a search and rescue in bear country. You sure about this? He asked, eyeing the sky. Moon's gonna be red tonight. Bad juju, my grandfather always said. Just be ready to pick me up at dawn, I told him. He nodded, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. As the plane lifted off, I felt truly alone for the first time in years. The camp was half a mile ahead, through a field of volcanic vents that hissed and steamed in the fading light. The air smelled like sulfur and something else, something metallic and wrong. I'd been coming to this valley for 15 years, but it had never smelled like this. As I walked, I noticed the bears, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, scattered across the ash fields. They weren't fishing or foraging. They were just standing there, watching me. Their eyes reflected the dimming sunlight like tiny fires. Bears don't do that. They don't just stand and stare. They move, they eat, they follow their routines. But these bears were perfectly still, like soldiers waiting for orders. My radio crackled. Marcus, you there? Yeah, I'm approaching the camp now. Be careful. Something's not right about this whole situation. I know, I said, but the radio had already gone dead. The first stars were appearing overhead, and the moon was rising huge and orange, already beginning its slow transformation to blood red. The research camp looked like a war zone. 3 tents, shredded. Equipment scattered everywhere. But it wasn't random destruction, it was systematic. The tents had been torn in neat lines, like someone had used a knife instead of claws. The supplies were arranged in patterns, spirals of canned food and torn fabric that made my skin crawl. I'd seen bear attacks before. This wasn't one. I pulled out my thermal camera and scanned the area. Heat signatures everywhere, bears, at least 50 of them, forming a loose circle around the camp. They were maintaining a perimeter, like guards. "Hello?" I called out. "Research team? Anyone here?" Nothing. Just the sound of steam hissing from volcanic vents and the distant calls of bears. Except the calls sounded wrong, too coordinated, almost like they were communicating. I moved through the camp carefully, rifle ready, bear spray on my belt. The ground was covered in tracks, bear tracks, but something was off about them. The spacing was wrong, the gait pattern strange. They looked almost like wolf tracks. But wolves don't leave paw prints the size of dinner plates. That's when I found the blood. It was everywhere, dried and brown in the volcanic ash. Too much blood for anyone to survive. But there were no bodies, no remains, nothing but blood, and those strange tracks leading toward the volcanic vents. My radio hissed with static. Then, impossibly, I heard a voice. "Marcus, run." It was my father's voice. My dead father, 23 years in the grave. I spun around, heart pounding. Who's there? The bears around the perimeter hadn't moved, but now they were all facing me. 50 sets of eyes, glowing in the darkening twilight, all fixed on me. And then they started howling. Not the huffing, grunting sounds bears make, actual howls, like wolves. The sound echoed across the valley, joined by more howls from every direction. Hundreds of bears, all howling like a pack. I ran. I didn't think, didn't plan, just grabbed my pack and sprinted toward a cluster of rocks near a large volcanic vent. Behind me, I heard movement, not the heavy crashing of running bears, but something faster, lighter. Paws hitting the ground in a rhythm that sounded like running wolves. I reached the rocks and turned, rifle raised. What I saw made no sense. The bears were running toward me, but they weren't running like bears. They were loping, their front legs moving differently, their heads held low like hunting wolves. In the red light of the rising moon, their shadows looked wrong, elongated, canine, predatory, in a way that bears aren't. I fired a warning shot into the air. The crack of the rifle should have scattered them. Instead, they stopped as one, like a military unit responding to a command. Then they sat down, all of them at once, and just watched me. "This isn't happening," I whispered. "This isn't real." But the Geiger counter on my belt was clicking steadily, confirming the volcanic radiation. My GPS showed my exact location. Everything was working normally, except for the laws of nature. I heard a sound behind me, a wet, labored breathing. I turned slowly, rifle ready. There was a cave entrance in the rocks, one I hadn't noticed before. The breathing was coming from inside, human breathing. "Hello?" I called. "I'm a ranger. I'm here to help." The breathing got faster, panicked. Then a voice, weak and terrified. Don't let them see you. They change when the moon turns red. The bears. They become something else." I moved closer to the cave entrance, keeping my back to the rocks. "I'm coming in. Are you injured?" "You can't help me," the voice said. "Nobody can. Once the moon is full red, they'll hunt us all. They're not bears anymore. They're Aklut." My grandmother's stories came flooding back. Aklut, the wolf whale spirits, shapeshifters who possessed predators during blood moons, hunting on land because climate change had destroyed their ocean homes. But that was just mythology, wasn't it? I entered the cave, flashlight sweeping the darkness. What I saw made my blood run cold. The researcher was alive, but barely. Dr. Sarah Chen, according to her name tag, her left arm was wrapped in torn fabric, soaked through with blood. But the wound looked strange. The torn flesh was already healing, forming new skin at an impossible rate. "How long have you been here?" I asked, checking her pulse. It was racing, way too fast. 2 days, I think. Time feels wrong. "Marcus, right? They've been waiting for you." "Who's been waiting?" "The Aklut. They knew you'd come. They wanted you here." Her eyes were wild, reflecting my flashlight like an animal's. "Your father was one of them, you know. A guardian. He died fighting them. My father died in a bear attack." "No." She grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "He died fighting an Aklut that possessed a bear, the same one that's leading the pack now. It remembers you, Marcus. It's been waiting for you to come back." I pulled away. "You're in shock. Suffering from exposure and blood loss. We need to get you out of here." "Look at my arm." I did. The wound was healing before my eyes. New flesh knitting together, leaving only faint scars. It should have been impossible. What happened to you? I was bitten. During the first night of the eclipse cycle. The Akhlut bite changes you, makes you part of the pack. I can hear them now, Marcus. All of them. They're talking about you, deciding whether to kill you or turn you. A howl echoed through the cave close, too close. I moved to the entrance and looked out. The moon was higher now, deep orange turning to crimson. And the bears were changing. I don't mean they were transforming all at once like in a movie. It was subtler, more terrifying. Their movements became more fluid, their postures shifted. When they moved, it was with the coordinated grace of wolf packs, not the solitary lumber of bears. One of them looked directly at me, and I saw intelligence in its eyes, human intelligence, maybe more than human. It opened its mouth and spoke. Not in words exactly, but I understood it anyway. A voice in my head, "Welcome home, guardian's son." I stumbled backward, nearly dropping my rifle. "That's not possible." "Everything's possible during blood moon," Sarah said behind me. "The barrier between worlds gets thin. Spirits can cross over, possess animals, even people. The Akhlut are whale spirits, but they've learned to possess land predators. Climate change destroyed their hunting grounds in the ocean, so they adapted. This is insane." "Then explain what you're seeing." I couldn't. Through my thermal camera, the bears' heat signatures were changing, becoming more concentrated around their heads and chests, less dispersed. Their body temperatures were rising to match the volcanic heat around us. My GPS was going haywire now, placing me at coordinates that didn't exist somewhere in the middle of the Bering Sea. My compass spun in circles. Every piece of electronic equipment I had was failing except for the thermal camera, and what it was showing me shouldn't be possible. The bears, or whatever they were becoming, formed a tighter circle around our position. I counted at least 70 of them now, more emerging from the volcanic landscape every minute. Then I saw the tracks, fresh tracks in the ash, leading right past our cave entrance. They started as bear tracks, massive prints with 5 toes and claw marks, but halfway through, they changed. The prints became narrower, more elongated. The gait shifted from the pigeon-toed waddle of a bear to the straight tracking line of a wolf. "They can change their physical form," Sarah whispered. "Not completely, not yet. But during the full eclipse, when the moon is completely red, they become fully corporeal in whatever form they choose. That's when they hunt." "How do you know all this?" "I can hear them, Marcus. I told you. The bite changed me. I'm becoming one of them." She pulled back her sleeve, showing her arm. The wound had healed completely, but the skin had a strange texture somewhere between human flesh and thick fur. "In a few more hours, I'll join the pack, unless you kill me first." A sound made us both freeze. Something was approaching the cave, something big, moving with purpose. I raised my rifle, finger on the trigger. A massive shape appeared at the cave entrance, blocking out the red moonlight. It was huge, bigger than any bear should be, but it moved like a wolf. Its head swung toward us, and I saw eyes that glowed with their own internal light. "The Alpha," Sarah breathed. "It's here for you." The creature spoke again, that voice directly in my mind. "You have your father's gift, guardian's son. You can see us, truly see us. Join us, or die fighting like he did. My father refused our offer, fought to protect this land from us. Foolish. We are part of this land, more than any human. We were here before you, and we will be here after." I fired. The shot echoed through the cave, deafening. But the creature didn't fall. It didn't even flinch. The bullet had hit. I saw the impact, but the wound closed immediately. Flesh knitting back together, just like Sarah's arm. "You cannot kill what is already dead, guardian's son. We are spirits wearing flesh. Bullets mean nothing." The creature advanced, and I saw it more clearly now in my flashlight beam. It had the massive body of a brown bear, but its head was wrong elongated, with a wolf's snout and teeth too long for any animal I knew. Its paws shifted as I watched, bear claws extending and retracting, replaced by wolf paws, then back again. "Your father had the same choice," the voice continued. "Accept the guardian's burden, or watch everyone you love die. He chose to fight. He died screaming. You are smarter, yes? You will choose to join us? Never. Then you will die. But first, we will take your son. He has the gift too, stronger than yours. He will make a fine vessel for our spirits. My son, Jake, in Fairbanks, 17 years old." I hadn't spoken to him in months, not since the divorce. But the mention of him filled me with a protective rage I'd never felt before. You touch him, and you'll what? The creature laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. You are surrounded, outmatched, and completely helpless. Your weapons are useless. Your gods cannot hear you here. You have nothing. But that wasn't quite true. My father had taught me things before he died. Old Yupik rituals, protection ceremonies, ways to ward off evil spirits. I'd always thought they were just cultural traditions, stories to pass down. But what if they were more? What if my father had been training me for this moment my entire life? Sarah, I said quietly, the volcanic vents, how hot do they get? Hot enough to melt metal. Why? In the old stories, spirits hate volcanic fire. It's earth fire, pure and cleansing. It can drive them out. The Alpha's eyes narrowed. You would not dare. But I would. I had to. I grabbed Sarah's hand and ran deeper into the cave, away from the Alpha. Behind us, I heard the creature howl, a sound that was part bear, part wolf, part something else entirely. The howl was answered by dozens more from outside. Where are we going? Sarah gasped. Deeper. These caves connect to the volcanic vents. I've studied the maps. There should be a main chamber about 200 yards in. That's suicide. The heat down there is our only chance. We ran through the darkness, my flashlight beam bouncing off walls of volcanic rock. Behind us, I could hear the Alpha coming, its massive body scraping against the narrow cave walls. It was following us into the earth. The temperature rose steadily, my skin started to prickle with heat, and Sarah was gasping for breath. But we kept going, down and down, following the sound of rushing steam. Then we emerged into a massive chamber. The volcanic vent was huge. A crack in the earth 20 feet across, glowing with red-orange heat. Steam billowed up in thick clouds, and the air was almost too hot to breathe. Around the chamber's edges, I saw more of those spiral patterns made from bones and stones, the same patterns that had been at the research camp. This is a sacred site, Sarah whispered. The Aklut use it as a crossing point between worlds. During the blood moon, they can fully manifest here. I understood now. The volcanic heat provided energy for the spirits to take physical form. This wasn't just a hunting ground, it was a doorway. The Alpha emerged behind us, but it moved more carefully now, wary of the volcanic heat. In the red glow of the vent, I could see it more clearly. Its body was shifting constantly, unable to maintain a stable form. Bear, wolf, and something else, something with flippers and a tail, something aquatic. You see now, the Alpha's voice said in my mind. We are Aklut, wolf and whale, land and sea. We are adaptation, survival. Your kind has destroyed our ocean homes, so we claim the land. It is only fair. By killing innocent people, by reclaiming what was ours. Your father understood this. At the end, he saw that we were not evil, only desperate. But he still chose to fight us, to maintain the old boundaries, and so he died. A figure materialized beside the Alpha, translucent, ghostly, but unmistakably my father. He looked exactly as I remembered him, but his eyes held a sadness I'd never seen in life. Marcus, his ghost said, I'm sorry. I should have told you the truth, should have trained you properly. Dad, listen to me. The Aklut aren't lying, they are desperate. Climate change has destroyed their feeding grounds. They need to hunt on land to survive. But if you let them possess you, they'll use your body to hunt humans, your son next, then others. They'll build an army. The Alpha growled. We offer cooperation, not domination. Join us willingly, become a bridge between our worlds, and no one else needs to die. Don't trust them, my father's spirit warned. Once they have you, they won't stop. I've watched them for 23 years from the spirit world. They're growing stronger, bolder. But you're a guardian, the Alpha said to me. Your bloodline has the gift. You can control the transformation, maintain your human mind, while we grant you our strength. Together, we could protect both our peoples. I looked at Sarah. Her eyes were changing color, shifting from brown to golden. She was barely human anymore. What do I do? I asked my father. The old ritual, the one I taught you when you were 10, remember? You thought it was just a game, but it was real. It can bind spirits, force them to negotiate in good faith. I did remember. We'd drawn symbols in the dirt, chanted words in Yupik, offered fish to the fire. My father had said it was how our ancestors made peace with the animal spirits. But I need volcanic fire, I said. And I need a sacrifice. Earth. My father nodded sadly. I died to buy you time, Marcus. Now you have to decide, will you sacrifice your normal life to become a guardian, or will you run and let the Aklut claim your son? It wasn't really a choice. I pulled out my knife and cut my palm, letting blood drip onto the volcanic rock. Then I began the chant, words in ancient Yupik that I barely understood but felt in my bones. The Alpha roared and lunged forward, but the steam from the vent formed a barrier. The air shimmered with heat and power. I continued chanting, walking closer to the vent, feeling my skin blister from the heat. The words came faster now, more confident. I was remembering things I shouldn't know, memories passed down through my bloodline, techniques and knowledge from 100 generations of guardians. I accept the burden, I said finally, switching to English. I become the bridge. But on my terms. You hunt only natural prey. You leave humans alone. You protect this land instead of conquering it. And in return, the Alpha asked, I'll help you survive, find you new territory, negotiate with my people. But you'll obey the old laws, no killing humans, no possessing the unwilling, no spreading beyond agreed boundaries. The Alpha considered this. Around us, the cave was filling with more spirits, dozens of Aklut manifestations, pack members watching to see what their leader would do. You would trust us? The Alpha asked. No, but I'll bind you with the old magic. You'll have no choice but to keep the agreement. My father's ghost smiled. That's my boy. I completed the ritual, speaking the final words as I thrust my bleeding hand into the volcanic steam. The pain was incredible, but I held firm. The blood sizzled and burned, releasing smoke that swirled around the chamber. The Alpha howled, not in anger now, but in acceptance. The binding was complete. It is done, the creature said. You are guardian now, our translator, our limiter, our link to the human world. But know this, you are also one of us. You will walk between worlds, Marcus Ravenwolf, neither fully human nor fully spirit, forever changed. I felt it happening, my body temperature rising to match the volcanic heat, my senses sharpening to supernatural levels. I could hear heartbeats for miles, smell individual animals across the valley, feel the pulse of spiritual energy throughout the land. What about Sarah? I asked. She is packed now. But under the new agreement, she can return to human form when the moon is normal. She will help you, teach you, guide you through the transformation. Sarah looked at me, and I saw relief in her golden eyes. Thank you, she whispered. The Alpha began to fade, along with the other spirits. We will meet again, Guardian. When the next blood moon rises, we will test your resolve. I'll be ready, I said. My father's ghost approached, placed a translucent hand on my shoulder. I'm proud of you, son. You found a better way than I did. Now, protect your boy. Teach him what I couldn't teach you. Then he was gone, and I was alone with Sarah in the volcanic chamber, forever changed. They found us at dawn. The rescue team couldn't explain how we'd survived 2 days in the volcanic caves with no food or water. I told them we'd found shelter from the aggressive bears, waited out the eclipse, emerged when it was safe. They accepted this, mostly because they had no better explanation. Sarah backed up my story, though her eyes still flickered golden sometimes when she thought no one was looking. The official report blamed unusual wildlife behavior on the eclipse and volcanic activity. The research team's deaths were attributed to a tragic accident bear attack during an unprecedented congregation of animals. Case closed. But I knew the truth. I flew back to Fairbanks that afternoon, went straight to my ex-wife's house. Jake answered the door, and the moment I saw him, I knew. He had the gift too, the guardian's sight. He could see the spirits that walked alongside the living. Dad, he said, confused. What are you doing here? We need to talk, I said. About your grandfather, about our family, about who you really are. He stared at me, and I watched understanding dawn in his eyes. He'd been having dreams, he told me later. Dreams of running with wolves, of swimming with whales, of walking between worlds. I trained him that winter. Taught him the old rituals, the protection ceremonies, the ways to communicate with spirits without being consumed by them. He was a natural, stronger than I'd ever been. By spring, he could sense Aklut activity from 50 miles away. We became partners, father and son, both guardians, watching over Alaska's supernatural borders. The Aklut kept their word. No more human deaths during blood moons. They hunted natural prey, maintained their territories, and only manifested during eclipse cycles. In return, I helped them find new hunting grounds as the climate kept changing, negotiated with other guardian families across Alaska, built a network of protection and cooperation. But every 18 months, when the blood moon rises over Katmai, I return to the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. I stand at the volcanic vents and watch the transformation, hundreds of bears becoming wolves, ancient spirits taking physical form, the barrier between worlds growing thin, and I remember my father's sacrifice, my own transformation, the price of peace between humans and the spirits that share our land. The Aklut are still there, still watching, still waiting, and so am I. Because some responsibilities transcend individual choice. Some burdens pass from father to son through generations. Some truths hide behind legends, waiting for the right person to recognize them. If you ever visit Katmai during an eclipse cycle, listen to the rangers when they tell you to stay inside. Watch the bears carefully. And if you hear wolves howling where wolves shouldn't be, remember, some spirits adapt to survive, and the line between predator and protector is thinner than you think. I know. I walk that line every day. My name is Marcus Ravenwolf, and I've been a guardian of Katmai National Park for 6 years now, though I was a ranger for 21 years before that. I know things most people don't believe. I've seen the impossible become real under a blood moon, and I'm teaching my son to do the same, preparing him for the day when this burden passes to him. Because the Aklut are patient. The world keeps changing, and someone has to stand between the desperate spirits and the unaware humans. Someone has to be the bridge. That someone is us. My name is Catherine Nightfall, and I've spent 18 years as a ranger in Alaska's wildest places. People always ask about my name, Nightfall. My Irish father thought it sounded romantic. My Athabascan mother said it was a warning. After what happened at the Kennecott mining site, I think maybe they were both right. I'm 41 now, but I still remember being 12 years old when my parents' plane went down in the Alaska range. The wreckage scattered across a glacier, pieces of metal and life frozen in ice. My grandmother took me in after that. She was full Athabascan, traditional in ways that made my science-loving brain itch with frustration. The dead must be honored properly, Catherine. She'd tell me in her kitchen that always smelled like salmon and spruce. Disturb them, and they will not rest. The Adlet, the Dogman spirits, they watch over those who die badly. They collect the bones of the forgotten. I'd roll my eyes. Even at 12, I wanted facts, not folklore. That's why I became a forensic anthropologist. I wanted to understand death through science, not stories. I spent 15 years examining bones, learning to read them like books. Each fracture told a story. Each mark from a tool or tooth revealed truth. I published 31 papers. The FBI called me for cold cases. I was good at my job because I didn't let superstition get in the way. Then I found out about the grave robbers. It was 2011, at a dig site near Fairbanks. Someone had been stealing artifacts from Athabascan burial sites, selling them to collectors. Ancient remains scattered like garbage. I couldn't stop thinking about my grandmother's words. These people weren't resting properly. I quit my university job and joined the Park Service. If I couldn't stop death, at least I could protect the dead. Now I work out of McCarthy, deep in Wrangell Street, Elias National Park. 6 million acres of mountains, glaciers, and history. The Kennecott copper mine operated here in the early 1900s, pulling millions of dollars in ore from the mountains. The mining camp is abandoned now, a ghost town of red buildings slowly being reclaimed by weather and time. It was March 1993 when I got the call. A research team had gone silent. Dr. Stevens' team was documenting the 1925 mining disaster, my supervisor told me over the crackling phone line. They were supposed to check in 3 days ago. Nothing since. I knew about the 1925 disaster. Everyone around here did. 47 miners buried alive when a tunnel collapsed. The company was in a hurry. Copper prices were high. Safety was expensive. They dug too fast, cut too many corners. When the mountain came down, it came down hard. The bodies were never properly recovered. The company sealed the tunnel and buried everything. No funerals, no markers. Just 47 men erased from the record to avoid lawsuits. My grandmother had stories about that place. She said the spirits there were angry, confused. Men who died suddenly, violently, without proper rites. Don't go there when the ice breaks, she'd warned me once. That's when the ground opens. That's when the bones remember. It was spring thaw season now. The ground was waking up. I packed my gear, ground-penetrating radar, cameras, documentation equipment, cold weather gear rated to 40 below, emergency medical supplies, satellite phone, everything a ranger needs for a rescue mission in one of the most remote places in North America. The drive to Kennecott takes 2 hours on a road that's more like a suggestion. Potholes deep enough to swallow a tire. Drop-offs with no guardrails, just 1,000 feet of nothing. I'd driven it 100 times, but never during spring thaw. The road was breaking up, ice and mud fighting for control. I reached the abandoned mining camp at sunset. The buildings stood like broken teeth against the mountains, their red paint faded to rust. The main processing mill loomed 9 stories tall, windows empty as dead eyes. The wind was wrong. I've spent enough time in Alaska to know wind, how it moves through valleys, how it sounds in different seasons. This wind felt like it was coming from underground, carrying a smell that made my stomach turn. Not quite rot, not quite mineral. Something in between. The research team's camp was near the old disaster site, about a mile from the main buildings. I hiked in as the temperature dropped. My breath came out in clouds. The ground crunched under my boots, not snow, not quite ice, something crystalline and strange. I found their camp at dusk. The tents had collapsed inward, like something had pulled them down from below. Equipment scattered everywhere, cameras, tools, notebooks with pages torn out, but no blood. No signs of a bear attack or weather damage. Just emptiness. And tracks. Lots of tracks in the soft ground around the camp. I knelt down to examine them with my flashlight. Boot prints, normal enough. But mixed with them were other impressions. Deeper. The weight distribution was all wrong. Heel too heavy, toes too splayed. And they were coming from the direction of the old mine entrance. From underground, I stood up fast, my hand on the radio. Base, this is nightfall. I'm at the research site. No sign of the team, but something's wrong here. Camp looks abandoned in a hurry. Static answered me. Then a voice, faint and scratchy. Can't hear you. Interference. Strong. The radio died completely. I tried the satellite phone. Same thing, dead air, then static that sounded almost like singing. Old songs, the kind miners used to sing deep underground to pass the time. That's when I heard it. A scraping sound, like metal on rock, coming from the old mine entrance 50 yards away. The entrance had been sealed in 1925. I knew that from the historical records. Concrete and steel, locked up tight to keep people out and whatever was inside in, but the seal was broken now. Fresh cracks spiderwebbed across the concrete, and from the darkness beyond came that scraping sound again, steady as a heartbeat. Scrape, 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 like someone digging. I should have left right then. Called for backup, waited for proper support. That's what the protocols said. But I kept thinking about Dr. Stevens and his team. 5 people, missing for 3 days in terrain that kills in hours. I pulled out my flashlight and approached the mine entrance. The concrete seal had been opened from the inside. I could see the marks where something had pushed through, not broken, but pushed, like enormous hands forcing their way out. The metal reinforcing bars were bent outward, twisted in ways that would take serious machinery or incredible strength. The ground around the entrance was warm, not frozen like everything else warm, almost body temperature. Steam rose from cracks in the soil, carrying that smell again. Preservation chemicals and decay mixed together, like a morgue and a tanning shop had a baby. I aimed my flashlight into the darkness. The tunnel stretched back into the mountain, shored up with ancient timbers that looked ready to collapse. Railroad tracks ran along the floor, disappearing into shadow. Mining equipment sat abandoned, rusted carts, old tools, a lunch pail with a 1,925 newspaper still inside. Hello? My voice echoed back. Dr. Stevens? This is Ranger Nightfall. If you can hear me, call out. Nothing. Just my echo and that constant scraping sound. Deeper now, further back. I stepped inside. The temperature rose immediately. No ice on the walls here, just damp rock and old wood. My flashlight beam bounced off mineral deposits that glittered like teeth. The tunnel sloped downward at a steady angle, following the old copper vein. Every 20 feet, I found something that didn't belong. First, a modern excavation tool, one of those fancy laser measuring devices Dr. Stevens' team used, lying in the middle of the tracks, powered off, covered in fine dirt. Then a camera, lens cracked, memory card missing. Then a boot. Just one, left sitting upright like someone had stepped out of it and kept walking. The scraping sound grew louder. I followed it deeper, my ranger training battling my anthropologist curiosity. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber, one of the old work areas where miners had extracted ore. My flashlight swept across the space and I froze. Bodies. No, not bodies. Bones. Human remains arranged along the walls, still partially buried in the rock and soil. But they weren't lying down like you'd expect from a burial or cave-in. They were standing up, leaning against the walls, positioned like they were waiting for something. 47 skeletons, the missing miners from 1925. My forensic training kicked in automatically. I could see the trauma patterns, crushed ribs, shattered skulls, bones broken from the tunnel collapse. They died instantly, violently. But someone had arranged them after, stood them up, organized them. The research team's equipment surrounded the bones. Excavation tools, documentation cameras, sampling kits, all arranged in a circle, like an offering. And in the center of the circle, carved into the stone floor, were symbols I recognized from my grandmother's stories. Athabascan mortuary symbols, the kind used to guide spirits to the afterlife. But they were wrong. Reversed. The research team had copied them incorrectly. That's when I saw Dr. Stevens. He was standing in the far corner of the chamber, facing the wall, absolutely still. His back to me, hands at his sides. Dr. Stevens? I moved closer, my flashlight beam finding him. Are you all right? He didn't move. Didn't respond. I reached out to touch his shoulder, and he turned around. His face was wrong. Not injured, not diseased, but wrong in a way my brain couldn't process at first. The skin looked tight, preserved, like he'd been mummified. His eyes were open but filmed over, seeing without seeing. His mouth hung slightly open, jaw slack. "Ranger," he whispered, his voice dry as old paper. "They're digging. They won't stop digging." Then he fell forward into my arms. He was ice cold, frozen solid, despite the warm air. But he was breathing shallow, slow, but breathing. I lowered him to the ground and checked his vitals. Pulse thready and weak. Blood pressure dangerously low. Classic hypothermia symptoms, except the ambient temperature was at least 60 degrees. "Stevens, where's your team? Where are the others?" His eyes found mine, struggling to focus. "Underground. They took us underground, made us dig with them, made us find the bones." "Who made you dig?" "The miners, the ones who never got funerals. They're still working, still trying to get out." His hand gripped my wrist with surprising strength. "Don't let them take you to the deep shaft. That's where they put the ones they keep." His eyes rolled back, and he passed out. I grabbed my radio on instinct, forgetting it was dead. The satellite phone was the same, useless. I was alone in an abandoned mine with an unconscious researcher, and 47 skeletons arranged like an art installation. That's when the scraping sound changed direction. It was getting closer. Coming from multiple directions, now from deeper in the mine, but also from the tunnel behind me, cutting off my exit. I pulled out my sidearm. I'm a decent shot, trained for bear encounters and the occasional aggressive moose. But I had no idea what I was aiming at. The first one came from a side tunnel I hadn't noticed before. It walked like a man but looked like an anatomy lesson. Bones held together by dried tendon and preserved tissue, wearing the rotted remains of 1,922's work clothes. A mining helmet sat on its skull, the carbide lamp still in place, somehow burning with a faint blue light. It carried a pickaxe, the metal tool looking solid and real in its skeletal hands. The thing turned its skull toward me, empty eye sockets somehow seeing. It opened its jaw, and a sound came out, not quite a voice, not quite a scrape of bone on bone, but something in between. "New worker," it said in a voice like gravel grinding. "Come to help dig." More figures emerged from the shadows. Skeletal miners in various states of preservation, all carrying tools, all moving with purpose toward me. I counted 7, then 10, then lost track as they kept coming. I did the only thing I could do. I ran. I grabbed Dr. Stevens under the arms and dragged him toward the main tunnel. The skeletal miners didn't chase me, they walked, steady and patient, tools scraping on stone as they moved. But more were coming from ahead, blocking my path out. I pulled Stevens into a side alcove, an old equipment storage area barely big enough for both of us. The miners walked past, searching, their bones clicking softly with each step. One stopped right at our hiding spot, turned its skull toward us, leaned in close enough that I could smell the preservation chemicals, formaldehyde, cedar oil, old earth. Find the bones, it whispered. Make them rest proper. That's all we want. Just want to rest proper. Then it kept walking, following the others deeper into the mine. I stayed in that alcove for an hour, Stevens unconscious against me, both of us trying to become invisible. My scientific mind was screaming that this was impossible. The dead don't walk, bones don't move without muscles. This had to be hallucination from bad air or hypothermia. But my grandmother's voice was in my head too, strong and clear. The Adlet watch over those who die badly. They collect the bones of the forgotten. When the sounds finally faded, I dragged Stevens toward the surface. The main entrance was clear now, the skeletal miners gone. But as I pulled him into the twilight, I looked back one last time. 47 sets of empty eye sockets stared back at me from the darkness. Watching, waiting, still working, 70 years after they died. I got Dr. Stevens back to the research camp and built a fire, a real one, not the propane heaters they'd been using. He needed warmth, but more than that, I needed light. Fire keeps things away. My grandmother taught me that. Stevens came around slowly, his body temperature rising degree by degree. But his eyes stayed strange, distant, like part of him was still down in that mine. How long was I down there? His voice cracked. 3 days, according to my dispatch. But you said they. Where's the rest of your team? He closed his eyes. We found the burial site on day 1. Perfect preservation, the permafrost and mineral content in the rock kept the remains intact. It was an archaeological gold mine. He laughed, bitter, wrong word, mining disaster. 47 men, never properly recovered. We started documenting them, taking samples for analysis. You disturbed them. We were careful, we followed every protocol, but... He opened his eyes, stared at the fire. That first night, we heard the singing. Old mining songs, coming from deep in the mountain. We thought it was acoustics, wind through the tunnels. Dr. Yanez went to investigate. And? She didn't come back. We found her at the bottom of a shaft we'd mapped as sealed. Found her digging with her bare hands, nails torn off, fingers bleeding. She was humming one of those mining songs. Stephen's hands shook. When we pulled her up, she looked at us like she didn't know who we were. Said she had to keep working. Had to finish her shift. I felt cold despite the fire. What happened to her? She went back down, just walked right past us and went back down the shaft. We tried to stop her, but she was so strong. Chen went after her, then Martinez. One by one we all ended up in those tunnels. He looked at his hands, still trembling. They made us dig. The miners, the dead ones, they showed us where to excavate. They wanted us to find all of them, every single body from the disaster. Not just the 47 in the main tunnel. There were more. More? The company lied. The disaster killed 73 men, not 47. They only admitted to the ones they couldn't hide. The rest they buried in unmarked shafts, closed off sections. Covered it all up to avoid lawsuits. Stevens grabbed my arm. Those men, they're still down there, still working, trying to dig themselves out. And now they have my team. They won't let them stop. A sound from the darkness made us both freeze. Footsteps, slow and steady, coming from the direction of the mine. I grabbed my flashlight and stood up, positioning myself between Stevens and whatever was approaching. My hand went to my gun, but I remembered the pickaxe those skeletal hands had held. What good was a bullet against something already dead? 3 figures emerged from the shadows. Dr. Yanez came first. She walked with a strange, jerky gait, like a puppet on strings. Her skin had that same preserved quality as Stevens, tight and waxy. Her eyes were filmed over, but tracking movement. She carried a mining hammer, the kind used to set spikes, and her hands were indeed destroyed, fingernails gone, fingers bent at wrong angles. Behind her came Chen and Martinez, in similar condition. All three wore expressions of blank determination. They weren't looking at us. They were looking at the ground, seeing through it to the tunnels below. "They're going back," Stevens whispered. "They always go back." I stepped into their path. "Dr. Yanez, can you hear me? You're safe now. You don't have to go back down there." She stopped, head tilting. Her mouth opened, and that gravelly voice came out, not hers, speaking through her. "Not safe. Not done. Still digging. Still 26 to find. 26 more bodies? 26 more souls." She stepped around me, the others following. "Have to make them rest proper. Have to fix what was done wrong." I grabbed her arm and immediately let go. Her skin was wrong, not cold like Stevens, but room temperature, preserved, like she was already halfway to being one of those skeletal miners. They walked past us, past the camp, straight back to the mine entrance. I wanted to stop them, but Stevens caught my hand. "You can't," he said. "I tried. The only way to stop is to finish, to do what they want. Find all the bodies, perform the proper rituals." That's what they told me. In between shifts. That's the only way anyone gets free. "What rituals?" "Traditional Athabascan burial rites. Your grandmother would know them." My grandmother had been dead for 5 years. But I'd grown up watching her, listening to her, even when I thought it was all superstition. I knew some of the prayers, some of the ceremonies, not all of them, but maybe enough. The ground beneath us suddenly cracked. A fissure opened up 10 feet from the fire, running straight toward the mine. Steam poured out, and with it came sounds, machinery, voices, the endless rhythm of picks on stone. The temperature spiked, then dropped, then spiked again, like the earth itself couldn't decide what season it was. More figures emerged from the new crack, not the research team this time. Actual skeletal miners, still in their work clothes from 1925, tools in hand. One of them was different from the rest, taller, wearing a foreman's badge, his skull showing a massive fracture across the temple. The foreman's skeleton pointed at me with a bone finger. "You understand the old ways. Your blood knows. Come help us finish. I'm not going down there. Already down here." The skeleton's jaw didn't move, but the words filled the air. "All this land is graves. Company dug mines through sacred ground. Athabascan burial sites, old and honored. Copper was more important than respect. When Mountain came down, it took us all, miners and ancestors, together, mixed our bones. Now none of us rest proper." That hit me hard. The mining company hadn't just killed their workers, they'd desecrated indigenous burial grounds. My grandmother's people, buried here for generations, disturbed by corporate greed. And when the disaster hit, they'd all gotten mixed together, miners and ancestors, all abandoned to the dark. "How many?" I asked. "How many, total?" 73 miners, unknown ancestors. The foreman stepped closer. "You count the bones. You know how to read them. You can sort us out, make us separate again, give us proper rights. Your grandmother trained you for this. You just didn't know it yet." My grandmother's words came back, crystal clear. "Every time I taught you to identify remains, every time I made you learn the prayers, I was preparing you. The spirits chose you long ago, Catherine. When they took your parents, it was to give you the sight. I wanted to deny it, to cling to my scientific rationality. But I'd seen too much. My parents' plane crash, always unexplained. My sudden success at finding archaeological sites. Like I was being guided. Every major discovery I'd made, I'd felt drawn to the location, felt it calling. The spirits had been using me my whole life. What happens if I don't help? Team stays mining. You stay mining. Everyone who comes looking stays mining. We've been adding workers for 70 years. Not many, but enough. Someone disappears in the mountains. Usually we find them." The foreman gestured back toward the mine. "Better to help willing. Otherwise, ground takes you anyway." The earth cracked again, wider this time. I could see down into it, tunnels branching in every direction, filled with moving figures, some skeletal, some preserved like Dr. Yanez, some fresh and confused. Decades of missing hikers and researchers, all down there digging, searching, trying to complete a task that would let them rest. Dr. Stevens grabbed my hand. "Don't do it. Don't go down there. You'll end up like me, like them. This isn't your responsibility." But I was thinking about my grandmother, about all those lessons I'd dismissed as folklore, About the 73 miners who died because some company decided profit mattered more than safety. About the ancestors whose sacred ground got torn up and forgotten. About justice and responsibility and the price of running away. "If I do this," I said to the foreman skeleton, "if I help you sort the remains and perform the rites, everyone goes free. Living and dead, everyone rests proper. That's all we want. To rest proper and be remembered true." I looked at Stevens. He was shaking his head, terrified. But I could see it in his eyes too, hope. Hope that maybe this nightmare could end. "I'll need my equipment," I said, "and I'll need the research team to help, the living ones, conscious and aware." "That's fair." The foreman turned to the other skeletons. "Bring the workers up, let them choose." They brought up Dr. Yanez first. She blinked in the firelight like someone waking from a long sleep, looked at her destroyed hands, and started screaming. We had to sedate her with the emergency medical supplies. Chen and Martinez came up in better shape but still traumatized, confused about how much time had passed. The other workers, the ones who'd been down there for years, didn't come up. The foreman said they'd made their choice long ago, decided to keep working rather than face what they'd left behind. "Some people," he said, "prefer the simplicity of endless labor to the complexity of living." I spent that night preparing. Not physically, the real work would happen underground, but mentally, spiritually, trying to remember everything my grandmother taught me. The prayers for the dead, the way to orient a body, the offerings required, the songs that guided spirits home. I also did the practical work, ground-penetrating radar to map the tunnels, historical records from the mining company, carefully retrieved from the old offices. Names of every worker who died, dates of employment, photographs when available. If I was going to sort these remains, I needed to know who they'd been. At dawn, I descended. The mine was different in daylight, or what passed for daylight filtering down through cracks and shafts. The skeletal miners waited for me in the main chamber, standing patient beside their bones. The foreman gestured toward a side tunnel I hadn't seen before. "The ancestors are deeper. We separated them best we could, but bones got mixed when the tunnels collapsed. Company dynamited some sections, trying to seal us in. Made everything worse. The tunnel led down, following a natural cave system the miners had broken into. The walls here weren't reinforced with timber. They were raw stone, ancient, covered in pictographs that made my breath catch. Traditional Athabascan burial art, symbols for the journey to the afterlife, representations of the spirit guides, and there, in the center, the adlet. The dogmen, collectors of bones, shepherds of the improperly dead. My grandmother's stories came flooding back. The adlet weren't evil. They were guardians, responsible for making sure the dead received proper rites. When someone died badly, murdered, abandoned, desecrated, the adlet took notice. They wouldn't let those souls move on until justice was served, until someone cared enough to do things right. They'd been watching this place for 70 years, waiting for someone who understood. The chamber opened up into a vast underground space, big as a cathedral, and it was full of bones. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Layers upon layers of human remains, some ancient, some from the mining era, all jumbled together by cave-ins and corporate cover-ups. The miners had tried to sort them. I could see piles organized by size, by bone type, but without training, without knowledge, they'd made little progress. This was my life's work. This was what all those years of studying, cataloging, identifying had been for. I got to work. Dr. Chen and Martinez helped, their hands steadier now, their minds clearing. I taught them the basics of skeletal analysis, how to identify sex from pelvis structure, age from tooth wear and bone fusion, ancestry from skull features. They learned fast, driven by the need to finish and escape. Days blurred together. We worked in shifts, sleeping in the upper chambers, eating supplies the skeletal miners brought us from God knows where. My hands developed calluses from handling bones. My eyes learned to see in the dim carbide light. My voice grew hoarse from singing the prayers, over and over, as each set of remains was identified and prepared for proper burial. The miners helped. They remembered their co-workers, could identify men by broken bones they'd seen healed badly, by the shape of a jaw or the gap in teeth. They told stories about the men they'd worked with, bringing the dead to life with memories before laying them to rest with ceremony. And slowly, gradually, we made progress. I found the mass grave first, the 26 men the company had sealed behind dynamited rock. Their bones showed evidence of the cover-up, scattered by the blast. I spent 3 days reassembling them, 3 more performing the proper burial rites. As I finished each one, something changed in the air, a lightness, a release, like pressure easing. One by one, the skeletal miners stopped moving. As their remains were properly honored, their spirits finally let go. They'd collapse mid-step, bones clattering to the ground, empty at last. The foreman was one of the last to go. "Tell them we weren't cowards," he said as I arranged his bones. "Tell them we tried to save the others." Company blamed us for the collapse, said we were drunk, careless. We weren't. We were just trying to survive. "I'll tell them," I promised. "I'll make sure the record is corrected. Thank you." His bones settled, and he was just remains again, finally at peace. The ancestors took longer. Many were too old to identify by name, their tribal affiliations lost to time. But I did my best, separated them from the miners, arranged them according to traditional practices, sang the prayers my grandmother taught me. Even without names, they could rest properly, return to the earth with honor. It was the 14th day when I found my parents. Their bones were at the very bottom of the chamber, mixed with the oldest remains. Their plane crash had been no accident. They'd been drawn here, like I was being drawn, called by the spirits to help. But they'd arrived too early. Before I was ready, before I had the training, the Adlet had kept them here, waiting for me. I spent a whole day with their remains, crying as I worked, speaking to them like they could hear. My grandmother's spirit was there too. I could feel her, guiding my hands, correcting my prayers when I got the words wrong. The 3 of them together, finally at peace, finally properly honored. When I placed the last bone, the ground shook, not violently, gently, like the earth was sighing in relief. Cracks sealed themselves. Tunnels collapsed softly, cutting off the deepest chambers. The temperature stabilized. The smell of preservation chemicals faded, replaced by clean mineral scent. The mine was just a mine again, old, abandoned, full of history but no longer haunted. We emerged into sunlight, real sunlight, not the filtered gloom of the tunnels. The rescue team was waiting, finally able to reach us now that the supernatural interference was gone. They wrapped us in blankets, checked our vitals, asked careful questions about cave-ins and survival. Dr. Stevens backed up my story: natural disaster, geological instability, miraculous survival in underground chambers. The other researchers nodded along, too traumatized to contradict, too relieved to care about the truth. Only I knew what really happened. Only I carried the full weight of it. But I also carried something else. As I rode in the helicopter back to McCarthy, I could feel it, a new awareness, a connection to the land that hadn't been there before. I could sense other places like this, other sites where the dead weren't resting properly. Dozens of them across Alaska, maybe hundreds, all calling softly for someone who understood. The Adlet had given me a gift. Or a curse. Or maybe both. I was a bone collector now, whether I wanted to be or not. The official report called it a partial tunnel collapse with miraculous survival. The mining company, now a subsidiary of a larger corporation, settled quietly to avoid negative publicity. The research team got therapy and moved on with their lives. Nobody wanted to talk about the missing 2 weeks, the destroyed hands, the memories that didn't quite make sense. I stayed. They promoted me to a special position, Cultural Resource Protection Specialist for Wrangell Street. Elias. The title gave me authority over all archaeological sites in the park, especially those involving human remains. I developed new protocols, combining scientific method with traditional respect for burial practices. The indigenous communities noticed. Elders started reaching out, sharing information about sacred sites they'd kept secret for generations. They trusted me in a way they'd never trusted other Park Service employees. My grandmother's training, my mixed heritage, my willingness to honor the old ways, it all mattered. The Kennecott mine became my responsibility. I supervised its transition from abandoned hazard to protected historical site. We performed official reburial ceremonies for the 73 miners, their names finally listed on a proper memorial. I made sure the corporate cover-up was documented in the historical record. No more lies, no more forgotten dead, but I also sealed the deeper chambers. Some things don't need to be excavated. The ancestors rest there now, properly honored, protected by geology and respect. I visit every year during spring thaw, when the ground wakes up, and I leave offerings. Tobacco, food, prayers. The Adlet watch over them, and they watch over me, because I can feel them now. All across Alaska, wherever I go, I sense the disturbed dead. Climate change is exposing burial sites that have been frozen for thousands of years. Construction projects keep cutting through unmarked graves. Grave robbers still exist, still selling artifacts to collectors who don't care about cultural destruction. And I stop them. Sometimes through official channels, permits denied, sites protected, prosecutions recommended. Sometimes through less official means, a conversation with an elder, a warning to a construction company, a prayer ceremony performed in the middle of the night. The Adlet help. I see them sometimes. At the edge of my vision, skeletal figures with dog skulls, watching over places where the dead need protection. They don't take me anymore. I'm one of them now, in a way. A collector of bones, a guardian of the forgotten. Last month, I got a call about a site near Denali. Construction crew found human remains, kept building anyway, didn't report it. By the time officials noticed, they destroyed a burial ground containing 15 individuals. The workers started having accidents, equipment failures, unexplained injuries, one man driven mad by voices in the machinery. I'm heading there tomorrow. It's spring thaw season again. The ground is waking up. And I can hear them calling the dead who need justice, the spirits who need rest, the bones that need collecting. My grandmother was right about my name, Nightfall. The darkness descending, the end of the day, the time when the dead walk free. I used to think that was romantic. Now I know it's a job description. So, if you're ever in Alaska, and you see old mining sites, old burial grounds, places where the earth looks disturbed, be respectful. Leave offerings, say prayers if you know them, and if you can't do that, at least acknowledge what happened there. Remember the dead, because they remember you. And if they're not resting properly, if someone disturbed them without respect, they'll find a way to make you understand. They'll find someone like me, or they'll keep collecting workers until someone listens. The Adlet are patient. They've been here for thousands of years. They'll be here for thousands more. Watching, waiting, collecting bones. Making sure that everyone, eventually, rests proper.